Hi, everybody. Welcome to La Lista, a Latinx writers podcast. I am your host, Ruben Mendive, and today we have a new writer here via Skype because of the stay-at-home order in LA, social distancing, everything that's going on. So we're doing it through Skype. My first question is always, who are you, what's your name, and how do you identify?
Hi everyone, my name is Laura Rivas and I am a quirky MEXI-CAN Latinx writer. I grew up in LA in the suburb of Southgate, which is primarily a Latino suburb, but I was born in Mexico near Guadalajara.
And that's usually my follow-up question. So what's like your family history? So where are you from? Where are your parents from? Like, what's that story?
Well, my dad's his family's from Tequila, where they make tequila. So that's 30 minutes away from Guadalajara. And so we would always go back as a kid and visit there. And his family is really big. I think my grandma had 15 kids. So I have a big family on his side. My mom's family is 4 children. And they grew up like maybe 30 minutes away. It's another small town called Tala. And when my father came, he was here in LA he was first in Texas, and then he moved to LA because a couple of his brothers moved to LA. And he worked in, at McDonald's. I think he first worked in McDonald's, and then he works in the junkyard. And then ultimately he became his own taxi driver. And yeah, me and my sister came with my mom, and we just settled in LA. And then we were very fortunate, looking back now, that we were able to get papers. So I got papers when I was 13. So like seeing the whole DACA situation right now, and just being like, wow, like, you know, I got papers, and a lot of people don't have the opportunity to have job opportunities. And a lot of my friends, after we graduated from college, I realized that they didn't have papers. So they're like, I'm just going to community college and finding a job. And, you know, I really hope that the renewal of DACA will continue. And, you know, people like myself that were brought here are able to continue to live their lives in the U.S. And
yeah, and did you mention at what age you were when you moved? You all moved over here?
I think I was 3. Yeah, I was 3. And one of the things that sticks out in my childhood is, again, since I grew up in a very primarily Latino community, I was very fortunate that all my teachers in elementary were Latinos too. And so we had Spanish classes because there was a lot of people like myself that came with their parents. And I didn't learn English until I was in 3rd grade, because then it was mandatory by the state of California to know English, to be taught English. And so my teacher, she's a great teacher. She was a very hard teacher, but like looking back, like she was hard for a reason. And so like she taught me English and Spanish at the same time, how to write and how to read. So everybody in both sides of my family make fun of my family because it's only me and my sister, and everybody else in every other family had like 5 or 4 kids. And I know, like, you know, I'm not trying to stereotype, but like it's just rare in my family. But yeah, and then when we lived in Southgate, we lived in a small house for like 14 years, which was crazy, but fun and interesting. And my landlord was she was Mexican, but her godparents were Cubans, and they taught her Santeria. And so as a kid, my front yard was their backyard, but that's where they did their Santeria. So like I saw a chicken being cut and like have their blood right in the front yard. She was friendly though to us. But that's a little bit insight into my childhood. Oh, and then sorry, I forgot to mention that my landlord had 5 chihuahuas, 2 macaws, and a couple of chickens, I think. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was
And, yeah, no, and I'm fairly new to LA. Not really, but like I don't really know that much about like the Southgate area. So how would you describe it for like someone that hasn't been there? Like, what's the scene? What's the vibe? What was it like?
growing up, just very, family friendly. I didn't even know I was in LA, if that makes any sense. 'Cause I was like really removed from Hollywood. Um, yeah, it was fun. Again, I feel very fortunate that even people that grew up around LA have told me that like they didn't have teachers like I did, or like like first grade through fifth grade, all my teachers were Latino, which is rare.
Mm-hmm.
And they also grew up. One of my fifth grade teacher grew up in Southgate, in front of like the elementary school. Like that was his home growing
Mm-hmm.
up, and so I think they realized that they were providing reassurance to these new migrant children to be like, look, I grew up here, I studied this, or like I remember one of my teachers, he was an avid runner, and another teacher, he played guitar, and so just like different options. And then my fifth grade
Mm-hmm.
teacher, he went to UCLA, and he decided to take us to see an opera. I was like, this, like, looking back,
Yeah.
I was like, damn, all my elementary teachers were cool and taking us to like these what do you call it, field trips, really.
Yeah.
And when I got to middle school and high school, there was like no field trips at all. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And so it was really cool that they took did everything to the next level and be like, no, you guys can achieve this and try this, and you know. It's good that you speak Spanish, and I've met a lot of people in college that were like, oh no, if they were in a primarily white neighborhood, they were taught like, no, like you speak English only, you're in America.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not how I grew up, so I feel very grateful to have had that support and community that allowed us to continue our language and our culture.
Yeah, yeah, and there is actually like a lot of power in that. So like, because I think even growing up, I think I had maybe like two, three Latinx teachers in my whole like school career. It is like a thing to like have someone that you can have like a familiarity with, who's like an adult and a professional, and like, I think sometimes as immigrants we come to this country and it's like very like work survive mentality, and it's
Mm-hmm.
interesting that you also got to meet Latinx people that had been here for maybe one or two generations and sort of had a more established like life and foundation to like sort of pursue other things. So yeah, that's interesting. Because you're right, it is pretty rare, and there's like studies on this that it's like most teachers are white, and like when they're not white, it actually is a very positive impact on the students. But let's get into like middle school then. You sort of mentioned it, like middle school and like high school. Like, I always like to ask people like, who were you pretending to be, and how did other people see you at that time? Through those years, through these very like crucial years.
I think people have always thought of me as very quirky, but they didn't have nice words to say that. They would say like, "You're weird," and I was like, "Why would you call me weird?" But the older I got, I was like, you know what? I prefer to be weird than be like boring and stuff. And middle school, it was like a lot of people, like the worst time in my life, just trying to figure out who you are and stuff like that. I just like singing and dancing. I will say though that again, I did have good English teachers in middle school, and actually my white teacher was the teacher that introduced me to my first Latino writer, which is Sandra Cisneros
Mm.
with House on Mango Street. And it was really, I mean, again, she was really hard, like kind of those teachers where you think they're always going to be mean, but they're just very strict, and they don't know how to
Mhm.
like be more subtle and just say like, I'm trying to teach you this, like, no, you got to do this, um
Yeah.
so looking back, I was like, wow, that's really great that you told us about her. And again, it was just huge because my elementary, I don't know, I want to say there was like 24 of us, right, for 5th grade, and then we get to 6th grade, over 2,000 students. So that was a huge difference. High school, again, even bigger because I grew up in LA. So like we had tracks A, B, and C, and I was part of C track. And I think, I'm sure from freshman year to senior year, it would probably have been like 1,000 people that graduated, but we ended up with like 500 people.
Mm.
So again, really huge. I had a really great homeroom teacher, and he, with every student, he was very nice and was like, oh, what's your interest? And took the time every day to get to know one another for like 5 minutes. And he started Students Run LA in his homeroom, which is students that run the LA Marathon. And
Mm.
so he was definitely a good mentor to, just in general, like, what are your passions and like, what do you want to achieve? And I was able to run up to 18 miles. So I did a half a marathon,
Wow.
but I didn't, I didn't continue practicing. But I told myself later on in life I would achieve the goal to run the LA Marathon, and I did way back in 2015. Took a while, but I did it. Um, yeah. And actually, in high school and middle school, again, like I said, people would tease me. So I would say those times I was I'm friendly, but I wasn't. I was friendly, but I wasn't really outgoing. And then once I left high school and middle school and went to college, and got like, again, people are surprised. They're like, but you grew up in LA. But I was like, I didn't have a car. I did whatever my parents wanted me to do. So like going to Cal State Northridge up in the valley and like meeting my first roommate who was Jewish. I didn't know about Jewish people, so just, you know, going away from this hub that was really nice growing up in, but just realizing there's a lot out there in the world too.
But like, why do you think that is? Why do you think people like just stay close
Well,
to home
I
and like?
I think the issue is that we're so span out that like there should be different sections of LA, because it's, Northridge from where I grew up is like about 18 miles, which doesn't seem like a lot, but then when you have so many people living in a city, and now with Uber and Lyft, I feel like every day is just more. The freeways are more packed. Like when I first started working, I felt like any job I could get there in like 30 minutes from Southeast LA. Now it takes minimum an hour, which is ridiculous. And
Mm.
and I think that people don't want to sit in their cars and just be like, oh my god, it's just.
Yeah.
But I will say though, I will defend my LA natives. We will travel everywhere. We will travel everywhere because this is our hometown and we love it. Um, Maybe we don't do it as often as we like, but I have friends in Long Beach. I have friends in the Valley. I have friends all the way in San Bernardino.
And you sort of mentioned that you went to like Northridge. Did you, or graduating high school and going into Northridge, did you have in mind what you wanted to do, what you wanted to study?
Yeah, I always knew that I wanted to get into film and television, and so I went to Cal State Northridge because it was one of the better programs for film and television. So I declared that as my first major. And in high school, I took French, and it was a lot of fun. I got to learn more about their culture and how they're really into the arts. And so in college, I was like, oh, maybe I should minor in this. And then I decided to double major because the head of the French department was like, well, Laura, you want to be fluent in French? Just go live abroad. You're young. Don't worry about it. Like, just do it. So I did that as well. I studied abroad in France, and it was one of the best experiences to learn about the French culture. But it's funny because this other girl in my French department, she went to Paris, and I went to the south of France in Aix-en-Provence, which is an hour away from Marseille. And she had all these plans to travel, and I was on a budget, so I was like, I am sticking to the south of France. It's like LA weather, you know. I'm Mexican. I grew up in LA, so I don't do snow, so I'm good. And unfortunately for her, that year it rained, and there's so many winter storms up in the north in Paris, so she couldn't travel at all. But down in the south, oh my God, Aix-en-Provence, which was a college town, so we were able to go to Barcelona, and it was so funny because it made me realize the major difference between Europeans, or maybe the major difference between Europeans and LA natives, because we took a bus from Aix-en-Provence to Barcelona, which is 6 hours. And so people from my program that were from LA were like, oh, okay, whatever. And then we were on the bus, and all these Europeans were like, why are we not there yet? It's been about an hour. We should have been in the other country by now.
How did you know that's what you wanted to major in, you know, in film, and like, where did that start? What was the seed that planted? Like, can you sort of like walk us through that?
So growing up, my dad and his family were really into watching movies all the time. So when we ever go to visit family, we would watch movies. Again, growing up where I did, we watched Telemundo, TV Azteca, Galavisión, and Galavisión had a lot of like the golden era of Mexico films, and so I was addicted to watching Cantinflas, Pedro Infante, later on La India Maria. I always loved watching comedy, and that's what I write mostly. And so it was great to grow up in that environment. And then I think I was really drawn to learning French because the French people really love the arts, especially films. And so my senior year in high school, my French teacher, I convinced her to show us a French film. And she showed us this movie called La Boum, which stands for The Party. And it's basically about this 15-year-old in Paris that just wants to party. And I was just like blown away because I was just like, people paid someone to write about a 15-year-old having a party. Like, that is so crazy to me, you know?
Yeah.
And so it's like, wow, like, you know, and of course, the older I got, I was like, oh, I'm in LA. I'm not too far away from Hollywood. It's like, why not? Why not study this? Why not figure out how to get into it and go from there?
Yeah, I always wonder about that too, just because, you know, to people that are into like filmmaking and writing that are from LA, like, what was your like sort of like awareness of like the industry as a like job and like a thing you could pursue?
Again, I'm really, Southeast LA is really removed from Hollywood, but I had homework assignments in high school saying like, what do you want to do? And so like do a 1-page paper on that and do research on that. And so I researched like, oh, how to get into the industry, and I don't know, I just always had that. I guess it comes from my dad too, that like he wanted to be his own boss, and he just did it. And so it's just like, oh, well, from my dad's family, his sisters are business owners. And so I don't know, I just, it was always in my head like, oh, well, like you just have to, you know, do put in the work and just keep at it and continue to achieve it. And well, also when I was in France, I was debating too. It's like, oh, should I live in France? And all my friends were telling me like, you're in LA, you crazy, like you should stay in LA. That's where all the opportunities are. And so just stay there and figure it out. And so it was so near, but then so far away at the same time. Because again, I didn't have any connections. I didn't know exactly the whole process, but you know, I figured it out a little bit when I was in college. For me personally, though, looking back, I would just tell my younger self to be more outgoing. Like, it took me there, but like just be more outgoing. I think for anybody that wants to pursue a career in TV and film, is just you just got to tell people exactly what you want to do, and also just put in the work and keep on showing those people like this is my work, this is what I want to do.
Yeah, no, that's really good advice. Because I feel like it does take some sort of like, I think some people are very naturally good at that, but other people you sort of, especially writers, you have to like work your way into that. It's not like a
Yeah,
natural instinct to be like very outgoing about, you know, your process and who you are and what you want to do, you know?
I believe me. Yeah, it like after graduating college, I did a lot of unpaid internships, but I learned a lot. I worked for Montezuma Esperanza's production company, and I learned about development and how they would reach out to writers and directors, and doing coverage for scripts. And so, yeah, just again, I would just say to anybody trying to pursue writing and directing, any field in entertainment, is just learning as much as you can, and it's okay if you mess up on a certain thing. Like, just continue to progress. That's the most important thing. Just continue to progress, and again, always let people know what you're doing, and say like, this is what I want to continue to do.
Yeah, and you know, you sort of mentioned what you did after college. Like, did you know like exactly what you were supposed to do, what you were gonna do? Did you have a plan of like, you know, you graduate, you have like a film degree, so it's like, did you know what even to do with that?
I think I was really naive to think that, like, again, my experience at CSUN was great, but I was just like, I went to school, I did a couple internships, I should have a job. But it's like, okay, no, like, that's not how the real world works. Like, you gotta, again, apply and continue to tell people this is exactly what you want to do. And I think for myself, it's hard. I know it's hard, especially when your parents still make a lot of money, to be like, oh yeah, I'm gonna do this unpaid internship. And for those people,
Mm.
I would just say, keep on working your 9 to 5, and just at night write or do whatever you need to do, direct. And nowadays, I think when I got out of college, it was still not very popular to have like editing devices on your phone, or like even Premiere wasn't that cheap back then.
Mhm.
So nowadays it's a lot easier, but yeah, no, it was difficult. I actually worked at a high school in South Central for a year and a half before really starting my career in entertainment. And I really liked it, because that was one of my personal goals, is to give back to the community, and do something in education. My mom has worked as a teacher's aide for about 15 years. I felt like, from my teachers and just growing up, I was talking to these kids and just saying, like, keep at it. And I did see um, teachers that were condescending, and I was just like, oh man, like, I would talk to the kids, be like, just get your high school diploma, and do what you want to do. It doesn't have to be go to college. You don't have to go to college. You could just maybe do a trade school. Whatever you want to do, just do it, and
Mhm.
get out of this bad situation. Because I did see, like, one time there was a shooting by the high school, which was really scary and stuff. And a lot of these kids, their parents, unfortunately, were using drugs, and or just working all the time to provide for their families. And even one of the I remember one time this teacher yelled at this kid because he was sleeping, but in front of the whole class. Like, he could have just tapped him and be like, hey, like, can you please.
Yeah.
But no, he made fun of everybody. He made fun of him in front of everybody. And then he was frustrated. He's like, sir, I work after school, okay? Like, I have a job. I'm helping my family. And then he was just like, whoa,
Yeah.
he happened to be white. And so it was like, yes, sir, not everybody grew up like you. But yeah, that was my experience after college, and just seeing the real world. And That's something I always use in my writing too, is write what you know and what you experience.
I was born in Mexico, and we moved here when I was 3 years old, and to me, like being an immigrant is like very much part of like my writing and like my story and who I am. So I was just wondering how you related, you being an immigrant to like your identity and also like the types of stories that you like to write about.
Growing up, like I said, I like to put everything that I've experienced into my writing. And just it's a lot of rewriting of certain situations, and I really like comedy, because comedy is more like drama, really, if you think about it, because it's about a lot of traumatic things, but just having humor come out of it. And one of my goals as a writer is to write a show or it could be turned into a movie about my elementary teachers. I think that would be such a great story to tell, and to relate to any immigrant that comes to another country, and having the relief to have, like you said, second generation immigrants, relate to them and still help them navigate the American experience.
Mm-hmm. And do you feel like there's like a through line to the type of writing you like to do? Like, is there certain stories that attract you that like you feel compelled to tell?
Yeah, I like to write about women, because I am a woman, and about the underdog that survives no matter what. I think it's
Yeah.
always, and it's a universal thing too. I want my writing to be universal and relate to our humanistic needs. And one of the shows that really made me believe that, like, I don't want to say dramatic, but like, again, this darkness into comedy, is Last Man on Earth, that was on Fox for a couple of years.
Mhm.
At first, when I saw that show, I was like, how is this show gonna make it? It's basically a guy by himself, like, but it lasted, what, 5 seasons, and I was
Yeah.
addicted to that show, and it was so funny, right? It was so funny and relatable, and that's what I want my writing to be.
And you mentioned how like, you didn't really like, you were like a little naive when you were graduating from college and you were doing the unpaid internships. Um, I'm curious about like when you felt like you had sort of like started like something clicked, like you were like, oh, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. Like this is the path. Like what was the first experience of that to be like, okay, I think I know where I'm going now, or I know sort of the direction to head into.
I got an internship at a studio, and it was a paid internship. The VP of the department was a great boss. That he was very encouraging. He would just always say, like, "Oh, let me know if you have any questions." And everyone at that department was really nice too. I told myself, you know what, like, I've already had a couple years of experience with, like, this is what did not work, this is what did work. And the first day I said to him, "Hey, can I shadow the producer that oversees Parks and Recreation?" And he was like, "Yeah, sure, like, but today you're answering phones." And I was like, "Okay, cool, I'll answer phones." And then they were still transitioning to tape. The end of my internship got extended, actually. So I quit my job
Mhm.
at the high school in South Central. The producer was like, "Okay, let's give her a shot. She's been doing a lot of work, and, like, always on time. Goes beyond what is asked." And I got to interview the whole cast of Parks and Recreation. I was just like, "Oh my God, Amy Poehler, Audrey Plaza, Chris Pratt. Like, are you kidding me? This is amazing. This is, like, I'm so happy that I was able to aim for that goal of, like, okay, cool, I'll get an internship and learn as much as I can and tell people exactly what I wanted to do." And, it turned at the
Mhm.
very end, it happened. And I was just like, wow, I just have to keep on telling people, like, this is what I want to do and stuff like that. And then I got another job at another studio, and I was writing promos for that department. And that was also really cool to see, my copy. And we catered to comedy, so it was really cool to see my copy put on air and be
Mm-hmm.
inside a studio and guide somebody to say those words the particular way I wanted to say those words. That was like amazing to me. Every day I was just like super happy to get out of bed and just be like, oh my god, like this is going out to the whole country, not
Yeah.
just, so yeah, that was great. But I'm really such a hard ass on myself. So, but every time I have those moments, I'm like, okay, keep on going. Let's, you can do this. And yeah, I'm really happy that I told myself, okay, like writing copy for promos is great and everything, but my greater goal is to write for TV. And so me and my friend got together and we're like, we're gonna write a series, like that's our ultimate goal. And by the end of 2017, we had developed our series, Tiny Laughs, and it was based on our lives, and it was based on our experience in entertainment.
Sort of speaking to that, like what was the process of like developing, shooting, and then like marketing and trying to get people to watch it? Like, can you sort of talk us through that?
Yeah, it took us about 6 months to develop the characters, and so yeah, that took us 6 months to develop from doing the characters' bios, the storyline, the treatment, um, and then the scripts.
Mm-hmm.
We probably did about 10 revisions, and even when we shot the series, we did a few revisions on the spot too, with like different locations and stuff like that. So yeah, 6 months of developing the series, writing the series, and then another 6 months for everything in pre-production. So like the casting, location scouting, what else? Oh, all the equipment, because I was debating whether I should buy my own equipment or rent it out. At
Mm-hmm.
the beginning of 2017, that's when we started the development of the series. And then my goal was for the end of 2017 to have production wrapped. 6 months for writing it, 6 months for casting locations, and then finally we figured out, because I had a full-time, we both, my co-producer, co-writer, had full-time jobs, and so we filmed the series on the weekends. So we
Mm-hmm.
shot on November and December of 2017. So the first weekend was brutal. It was like 35 hours for me and probably
Oh
30
wow.
hours for everybody else. But it was fun. It was fun. I remember my lead actress was like telling me, Laura, are you singing? And I was like, yeah. um, but so yeah, and then 2018 was just post production. Post
Yeah.
production will always take you longer, and by the beginning of 2019, we got a deal with Revry, which is the largest LGBTQ streaming platform. And so that was also one of those moments where, like, oh my god, like we did this, like you can do it, yay! It just takes a
Yeah.
lot of work.
Um, so I'm curious of like the crew for this web series.
Huh.
Like how big was the crew? How did you find these people? Like, what was that like?
Um, yeah, so finding the crew, it was a lot of our friends, coworkers that were willing to help us create the series. So the DP, we met her at the studio. The crew was me, Rick, Sean, usually about 5 people, big main crew for
Mhm.
sound, lighting, and then I cast about 15 people. Again, this is 5 episodes, so it's not
Yeah.
like, um, and then for locations, I think we had about like 4 locations, and luckily my sister was very nice and let me film at her house that she had just bought. So that really helped me out with my budget. And I would say also to people, um, I would say always invest in yourself and just figure out what is a good investment for yourself. For me, I decided to put in 6 months of my own savings and to executive produce the series.
Mhm.
And It was great. It's been great to have gone through that journey, and also showed that, you know, I'm really serious about my pursuing my career in film and television, and just learning also like what places are good to like rent out lighting or sound, um, you know, what's more efficient to like film in a car, or again a lot of ways that we got the show filmed was we kept on asking the cast and crew, was like, hey, do you know the location? Or I had
Mm.
originally rented out this office space, and we did shoot a couple of scenes there, but then we were running late, and it was, I think it was a holiday or something, and there was like a parade in downtown, and that's where it was, so it was like really difficult to go back and reshoot. But one of the actresses, she had a studio, so it was a photography studio, but it was still a
Yeah.
studio, and we shot some scenes for the architecture firm where the lead actress, the lead Valentina works, and it worked out
Mhm.
perfect because
Yeah.
it looked more like a office, and we didn't have the worry of having because the first place was a office rental place, so it's like anybody like WeWork or something like that.
Yeah.
Um, so there's a lot of people, and you know, well, it's open space, so you can't really tell them like, hey, we're filming something. But yeah, it was a lot through like mutual friends, and just again putting out there's like, hey, we need this, we need that, and we're really grateful to everybody that helped us out to create it.
Yeah. Yeah. And first of all, can you like sort of like give us like the synopsis for
Oh yes.
the people at home about, don't worry, I forget all the time to ask this just because I'm familiar with it. So you
Yeah.
sort of forget. So yeah, so like what's it about? Like,
Yeah, Tiny Labs is about a queer Latina architect trying to get a job promotion, and she goes to an improv class, and that's where she meets her love interest, who's an Asian American who just quit his job in accounting to pursue comedy and stand-up. So if you guys think about Insecure meets Master of None, that's Tiny Labs.
I got to see some of it and I was
Yay!
curious. I one thing that was interesting to me
Uh-huh.
was that like Valentina is like a queer like woman and
Mhm.
that the her love interest is like a man. And I think that's just interesting to me because I know a lot of like queer women who like
Uh-huh.
are in relationships with men,
Uh-huh.
and just from talking to them, it always feels like they think other people in the queer community feel some type of way about them.
Mhm.
And then they also don't feel like they're queer enough, or like it's like an interesting dynamic to like. So that's why when I saw that like you had like a queer lead in like a heterosexual
Mhm.
relationship, it was interesting to me because it definitely felt like a choice. So I just wanted to know what was like the motivation behind that.
The main reason we had her a love interest be Jeff, the Asian comic. I felt that way in the community too. I identify as bisexual, and so just saying Valentina, aka my story. And so I wanted to show that. I don't know if you saw the scene with her ex, who is a
Mhm.
girl, Tara. That confrontation of saying, "Oh, you're you're not straight, you're gay." Like you were saying about
Mhm.
the queer community, I felt that a lot of people in the community are very harsh towards bisexuals or queers in general, and they're like, "Oh, well, you're only dating men." It's like, but like, you know, I've had these past relationships, but like, I don't think it's necessary to show people that like I've had these. I have to show you in order to for you to believe me. And again, we're trying really hard to make season 2 come to life and show that in a deeper view as well.
Yeah. Yeah, because it is interesting, even just like with conversations and like queer groups. It is interesting how it's like your membership just doesn't expire, you know, like it's like,
Yeah.
oh, and a lot of, but I have noticed a lot of like bisexual women and dating men that they feel like, I don't know, they feel like they're still like one foot in each world, you know, and
Hmm.
it's like, I think it's very interesting in the way that it's like, it's not expected, and it definitely adds like another layer of like identity and like a complex like storytelling. So yes, that's why I was like, oh, this felt like I was very curious about what it was behind that.
Yeah, no, for sure. Thanks for asking. And yeah, that was the whole purpose, to make people, again, I want my work to be as relatable as possible.
So I am curious because I know a lot of people that are doing web series and they sort of
Yeah.
like develop them and then like crowdfund them and then they shoot it. And but I'm definitely curious about like how the connection with Revry came about. Because I've noticed like a lot more web series are starting to get these like deals and these distributions. So like, how did that come about?
We got connected to Revry through an event in U2 space. Outfest was doing their festival there, and we met the co-founder, Chris, and we went up to him, and we saw him talk, and then we're like, oh, cool, like he's looking for diverse queer stories. And
Hmm.
so we just pitched it to him right there and then he's like, okay, let me get your info and let's keep in touch. Send over the script, and we'll go from there. And I think it took about 6 months, really.
Hmm. How have you seen the experience of like having a web series? Because sometimes people put them on YouTube. Like,
Mm-hmm.
what have you noticed the difference between like having it on like a streaming platform as opposed to like I think the more traditional sense that people have seen them just on YouTube?
We wanted to put it in a platform that was looking for, again, more diverse in a sense of like more people of color
Hmm.
stories, Latinx stories, and we were like, oh, this is perfect to put it in that platform, and they're willing um, to take season 2 from us too as well, put it in the platform,
Mm.
and just cater to this queer audience that also happens to be Latinx or also happens to be Asian, or just anyone of color that has struggles in life and in dating. And I think it's really great that these platforms are out there for a niche demographic. In the
Hmm.
future, I would be willing to put stuff on YouTube and stuff like that, but also um, for the industry, sometimes I feel to acknowledge you, you need to be part of those platforms,
Hmm. Yeah.
to take you more seriously and be like, oh wow, like they're looking for your content and believe in you enough to have it in a paid wall.
You sort of mentioned like season 2 of Tiny Last. Like, is there anything else that you're like looking forward to like developing? Anything else that you're like interested in like writing about in the future or anything you're working on?
Rakshan and I, my writing partner, are working on a story called Finding Yesterday about what it would be like if immigration was through a lens of time travel, and only certain
Mm.
people are allowed to time travel. And so
Mhm.
we're pitching that to different programs and try to get the funding that way.
Mhm.
So I'm really excited to see where that goes. I already did a pitch trailer, so in my vision, it looks amazing, and 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 yeah, people should look out for that. And I want to write more comedy elements into sci-fi. I want to talk about Latinos in the military. I've had the script since college, um,
Mhm.
called Military Status, that talks about an immigrant's journey from a Latin country, and then she comes to the U.S. and then she signs up to the military in order to become a U.S. citizen. But again, I'm gonna try my best to make it as funny as possible and not as dramatic as possible, because I think, there is a lot of great stuff out there that's super dramatic and that is representing Latinos in the military. But I just always want my stories to be light and have as much humor as possible to give people hope. Especially around this time, it's really
Yeah.
tiring to see sometimes the same stories, but like there's more to us than these dramatic stories, and that's what I want my audience to feel once they finish watching something that I wrote.
I always like to ask, like, who are the writers that like you admire? This could be like people that you are like heroes of yours. This could be people that are like peers, people that you just see on the internet and you're just like, I love what they're doing. Just like, who are you excited about and And who are the writers that make you like feel like, oh, great, there's other people like me doing it?
Yeah, I really admire Gloria Calderon Colette. Like, wow, she's a superhero for all of us in the Latinx community with One Day at a Time. America Ferrera is amazing. I really look up to her too. Yeah, there's so many writers. One of the writers that are not well known, but I think a lot of people should be doing this more often, is going to like open mics and just hearing people do poetry or spoken word, and it really inspires me to write. One of the places that I go to see that is here around this Southeast LA neighborhood. It's called Alivio. They're really great, and people they're do different things. They don't necessarily call themselves writers. They're just doing their own thing, which I think it's really great to be able to have that platform in such a Latinx underserving community to express itself that way.
All right, cool. That's a good recommendation. And to sort of start wrapping up, where can like people find you? Like, what's your social media? Where can they hit you up if they want to get to know you, have questions?
Yeah, you can find me in Instagram as Laura Rivas. You could watch Tiny Laughs on Revry TV. So if you type in revrytv.com/Tiny Laughs, you'll be able to see us. It is a paid platform, like you mentioned, but you're able to watch the pilot for free. Oh, and we also have a YouTube channel where you can watch the trailers, the teasers, and the EPK. But yeah, thank you so much.
And you sort of answered this question at the beginning of the podcast, but I do like to have the writers title their episodes. So the prompt is a blank Latinx writer. So if you could give us your title and also what that means to you, because I think I like to use these titles as a way for other people to connect with each other and be like, oh, that's like me. Like, I should listen to this episode.
I would say I'm a queer MEXI-CAN Latinx writer. The reason I chose those two words is because, again, growing up, all I heard was like, you're weird, and this and that. But I was like, you know what? I'm quirky, okay? Relax. And MEXI-CAN, because I am Mexican. I'm very proud of it. And then I put the hyphen because I feel, not just being Mexican, I think all Latinos are capable of this. It's just we are go-getters. We can do stuff. And just remind myself, like, every time there's a no, it's like, okay, well, it wasn't meant to be, but like, just keep at it and just do it. Just do it and show people that you can do it.
Perfect. So I want to thank you so much for being on the podcast. Thank you to our listeners. I will see you next week with a brand new episode of La Lista podcast. You can follow us on Instagram and Twitter. Bye.